All right, so I'm hitting record. Welcome, Lynnda, to this call for the Friday feature in Phoenix Awakening. Lynnda is a community member of Phoenix Awakening, and she's the author of Trusting the Currents, which she feels was her purpose, one of her main purposes to bring this book into the world, to give birth to that book. In addition, she also works as an empathic consultant and a business intuitive to really help people become happy again. And she is known, really famous for being the world's first chief consciousness officer for a major marketing firm. And she's also writing a new book, a nonfiction book this time, on suffering and how suffering is connected to the expansion of consciousness, which we'll get to later on in this call. Welcome, Lynnda.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's good to meet you.
Awesome.
In person almost.
Yeah?
In person almost.
Yes. Yes, this is great. And we've been chatting for a few minutes before this call too, and connecting. And it's been really good to connect finally.
Me too.
Awesome. Yeah, I discovered you when I posted a post in Wisdompreneurs. It's now called Awarepreneurs. About because I'm writing a visionary fiction book myself, and then I was asking for recommendations on visionary fiction books, and you posted a comment with your book, so that's how we first met. And even though I haven't read your book yet, I really felt called to connect with you when I read through the synopsis on Amazon, and then I think I read the first chapter through you can see inside the book feature on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we've talked on Facebook for a bit, and I asked you like how the book won awards, and you said the book has had a life of its own, that it pretty much had no help from you. In fact, it sounds like from our conversation just now, you might even have been initially resistant to even promoting the book, right? But it took off on its own because the book didn't come from your ego of any of your desires for success. It came from you just surrendering to something higher, right? That great
Definitely.
mystery, right?
No,
So
I never
yeah.
expected to write a book. It was just, I just started hearing a voice one day, and I thought the entire time. I did not, at first, I would, type what I heard her say, and I fought her the whole way. I fought her the whole way. All the 10 years it took me to finish the book, I fought her the whole way. But she always brought me back again, and I'm glad she did. Because as I said, it really has been a defining event in my life. And she's been the most influential, the narrator, Addie Mae Aubrey, who narrates a book. She's a Black Southern woman. She's been the most defining person in my life. I mean, there's no one who's influenced me more than she has.
Yeah, that's awesome. That shows the power of surrender, which is a really big part of, the key to success and fulfillment in life. And I can relate to that. For example, last year, I was guided to turn some of my cosmic wisdom dreams into guided meditation videos, and I was very resistant at first. I fought it too, and I said, no one's gonna be interested. Like, why should I do that? This sounds so ridiculous. But I eventually said yes, and it's been an amazing journey. That part of my life alone has been incredible. Me just saying yes to that, so I can totally relate to that. So tell me about your book. Like, what's the book about? The main theme of the book.
Well, the book has sort of 3 layers to it. The first layer is just the basic story, which is a coming-of-age story told by a old Black Southern woman who is recounting her teenage years in the rural South in the late 1930s. And the book begins when she's 11 and ends when she's 18. And it's basically the story of the drama and tragedy and the things that defined her. And then woven through the story are spiritual messages that are universal, that are part of her journey, but part of everyone's journey. And then there's an energetic frequency that is embedded in the writing, which allows people, when they're reading it, it takes you into your heart chakra. And there are certain passages particularly that I always tell people, if they really feel a connection to a passage or a sentence, to say the sentence out loud, read it out loud, because there's a certain sound therapy that gets triggered when you say these out loud. So it's all these three aspects working together. And I guess the main message of the book is about having the courage to be who you are and not who other people want you to be. But it is just filled with, I mean, it's almost like every life lesson that you need to learn in life is somewhere in this book. And I find that people that read it, and it's funny because I really thought the book, because it has all strong women characters, I thought this was going to be a book that women were going to mostly be interested in, but almost half my reviews on Amazon are from men, which was really interesting. And they seem to be more profoundly even affected by women, because they think they're just, what happens is you think you're just reading a story, and then as she tells you your story, as she tells you her story, she brings you into your own story. So people will very often become very emotional reading the book because of something about what she's going through is reflecting back on them. And some people have a hard time even reading the book. If the heart chakra is closed and people have a hard time opening up their heart, they will have a hard time reading the book. They'll become uncomfortable at certain parts of it. And it's really interesting because so many people have read the book now that it's someone tells me how they're reading the book, how they feel about reading the book, where they're stuck in the book. I can usually tell them where they're maybe stuck in their own life or having struggles in other parts of their world, because everything is a reflection of us. Like every one of her experiences is a reflection of our own experiences. So she's just able to take you into your own heart and into your own wisdom.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like the way the book is written, it's really relatable to a lot of the challenges and problems that people go through in their lives.
Well, it's been interesting too, because I'm a white woman. All the characters are African American, and I've had such the range of people reading this. I've had Black, born-again Christian women read it. I've had in fact, my first review on Amazon was from an Anglican priest in England who somehow found the book via Twitter 2 days after it had come out, before I'd even told anyone it was out. And he found it, and he read it, and he loved it, and he emailed me about how it held a lot of the teachings that he teaches in his parish. And I've had Buddhists tell me that it covers their teachings. I've had Jewish psychologists tell me that it covers things that they teach. I've had family psychologists tell me it teaches what they teach. It's very thick with different messages and different information, and it tends to sort of get sticky onto people that are needing to hear certain parts of it. It's a really good book for anyone going through profound change in their life, because it really takes you through the process of change and allows you to see kind of how to go through it. And when I first wrote the book, I did not relate to the story at all. I did not relate to the character at all. I did not have any connection to it. I just felt like I was the one who was supposed to write it. But in the several years since I've been writing it and had it out, I've now gone through almost every of the experiences that Addie Mae wrote about in her own journey. I've been taken through them myself. So it was almost like, even though she was telling me a story about her past, she was also telling me the story of my future. So that was a very unexpected element of the book for me.
Yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like the book has universal appeal, like from a diverse audience. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm selling it all over the world. I mean, as long as people can speak English, because it's an English book. But I've sold books in Australia and Chile and Italy and South Africa and England and Romania, Canada. I mean, and it doesn't seem to have a demographic, meaning it's not really men or women or ages or race. It's really more of a psychographic. It's really more where people are in their own personal journey and how open they are within themselves. And when they're ready for an expansion of their own wisdom, this book sort of just falls in their lap. And that's why I never really promoted it all that much. I'm doing a little bit more now because I always felt that Addie Mae has a way of finding her people. She will somehow get to you if it's something that, you know, she thinks you should read.
Yeah. And it also sounds like the book is and was its own like living entity. And it was like the book was writing you, not just you writing the book, and you were just a vessel.
Yeah, in fact, I talk about that in the prologue. The prologue and the epilogue of the book are my stories of how the book came to me, the writing of it, and my reflection of it. And that's exactly how it was. I even say something like, as I created her, she created me. I'm exactly who I am because of her more than any other person. Because I listened to her though, but I had to listen because I could have easily, when I first started hearing her voice, went, this is crazy. I need to get back to work. No, I can't get on a plane and go to Sedona. You know, I have to be logical and practical, and I really don't have time for this. But the experience was so profound for me that I just kept saying yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And even when I wanted to give up, and I did want to give up many times, I would give up for a while. I was absolutely sure I am never going to look at this thing again. I'm done. And then it would just come back, sort of like a ghost and start calling to me again, and I had to listen. So and I self-published it, which was another completely crazy thing. That was, you know, again, I didn't know what I was going to do, but by the time I had finished it, it took me 10 years to write it, and I just couldn't spend another 3 or 4 years the traditional publishing system, getting an agent, getting a publisher, waiting for the publisher to publish it. And I was a debut spiritual novelist. I mean, who's going to publish me? So I just decided to do it myself. It took me 1.5 years. It was very, very difficult, but I'm really happy I did. It was the best. It was the best for my for this book, because one of the messages in the book itself is about self-reliance, because I think it was about being self-reliant, and that's, you know, that's been. I think I might lose you.
So, yeah, okay, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay, so you self-published it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then somehow, like, it sounds like somehow people started reading it and hearing about it, and
what happened was when I first published it, I mean, literally 2 weeks after it came out, my mother fell and shattered her femur, and I went into long-term 24/7 care of my mother.
Oh.
So I didn't do, the first year the book was out, I didn't do anything except enter one book award contest called the Nautilus Book Awards. And the Nautilus Book Awards are for books that are intending to make a positive impact on the planet. They're sustainability books, they're sort of spiritual books, conscious living books. And so I entered that contest, and they had one fiction category, and I entered the fiction category, and I won the gold medal in fiction, which was a complete shock. But in the meantime, I was busy with my mother, and I didn't really do much that rest of that year. And then last year, not really last year, 2015, the book came out in late 2013. And 2014, I didn't do anything except enter the contest because I was just busy, and it didn't really do too much. But I was getting reviews. I have 72 reviews now on Amazon, and I have a very high rating, and most of 5 stars, some 4 stars, a couple not good reviews, but that's sort of, you know, par for the course.
Yeah.
But I just, back in 2015, I decided to just enter a lot more contests. So I entered like 11 more book book review contests, and I won every one of them.
Wow.
And so that got me going through that year, because I was still in a big caregiving mode, and I didn't have a lot of time or resources to put towards the book.
Yeah.
So that kind of kept the book always, with every new win, or with every new great review, I was able to keep it. It was able to keep up, because there's 1 million books published every year. So if you're a one-time novelist and your book comes out, it just gets swallowed by the tsunami of other books coming out. So the awards I won actually just kept it alive. And then this past year, towards the end of the year, I was able finally to start doing some more work, and I've done some book events, and I've been working with the public. My book just got accepted into the New York Public Library system last week, which was really great, because they don't accept many indie published books. So now I'm beginning to work within the library system. I'm doing a book event up at the Yorkville Library next month, and I'm hoping. I did one in Chelsea in December, and I'm hoping to do more, because I think the library system is a really important system in this country to keep people reading and have access to books and access to ideas. And so bring the book out there and find its audience. The biggest problem with the book is finding its audience, is having a big enough net to find the people who are ready for the messages that are in the book.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is your greatest learning in this journey with the book?
Faith, because it has not been an easy journey. The beginning of the channeling part of the book was amazing. I mean, she just laid out everything in front of me that I needed during that period of time. But the process itself, like I said, she took me through all of the messages in the book, so it hasn't always been easy, and I had to have faith that that I was chosen for some reason, because there's also been a ton of magic around the book. I mean, literally every time I have given up, something has come to jumpstart this, and some person or some review or something completely unexpected. This book has an amazing backstory behind it of people that have touched it, and so I think faith has been a big one, and your sense of purpose and what you're here to do, and maybe it's not always easy. There's one line in the book, because as she becomes more aware and conscious, she realizes that when you learn more answers, you think that you're answering your question, but really all you learn is that there are more questions.
Yeah.
So when I earlier in my existence, I thought I had all the answers, and I was all about light and love and happiness and joy, and that was great. But then I realized, in the process of writing the book and in caring for my mother, that it's not always that way, and that suffering and struggle are just as valid, and are actually more important for growth and for learning than everything going great. And I think that that's something that that Addie Mae instilled in the story, is that you just have to keep going, even if you don't know where you're going. You just have to know yourself well enough and do the inner work, so that whatever step you do take, you're taking on your own volition, and that will always bring you where you're supposed to be. Even though you think you're supposed to be over here, it'll take you where you're really supposed to be.
Right. That sounds really good, and it's in alignment with the work I do nowadays, where I see that every one of us, we are all like outliers for our gifts and our purpose, and that our lives are designed perfectly for our gifts and our purpose to really flower and give birth to in the world.
Mhm.
where even our suffering is like perfectly designed to really grow our gifts. It's almost like the way diamonds and pearls are created, right? From all that heat and pressure, we have the diamond, right? Just like that. And it's also in every superhero movie, right? It's not always so obvious, but the most obvious was in Deadpool that I watched recently, where they made it so obvious. They were like, we're going to turn you into a superhero and awaken your superpower. And the way we have to do it is to make you suffer in all these different wild ways. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's kind of
Yeah.
funny and crazy at the same time. But it's in our real lives, it's more like subtle, right? So it's a beautiful theme, and it's also the theme of Phoenix Awakening, of the death and resurrection, whether it's a physical death or a psychological death, right? And it's also the
It's hard
theme
to
of,
tell the difference sometimes. I mean,
huh?
it's hard to tell the difference sometimes.
Yeah,
Psychological deaths can feel like an impending physical death, and I think
yeah,
what scares people so much is they don't realize how close to physical death ego death feels. We think it's just the death of an idea. You know, we don't realize that it's actually a visceral. It's a visceral experience to our bodies as well, and that's, you know, we don't have. There's not a lot of guidance with any of this work. There's a lot of guidance when it comes to being, you know, being joyful and in attracting abundance and all that. But when it comes to doing the dark work, there's not a lot of guidance there. People look at it as it's a negative thing, and I actually think it's very important because it's where all new growth comes out of.
yeah. So this is a good segue to talk about the new book you're writing, because that's the theme of the new book about suffering and the expansion of consciousness.
Yeah,
So let's talk about that.
that I'm just about to start. I
Okay.
came up with the idea actually. I mean,
Mm,
you know, like I said, I've gone through suffering myself in a way that I didn't really knew it existed
mhm.
until I really had to take care of my mother, and I lost a lot of my own life, and
Ah,
it was terrifying to lose everything that I had been to care for someone, and be kind of locked in that world for a long time. And I got physically ill, and I financially ill, and and I didn't understand it because I had nothing to compare it to. To me, it was like a failure. I felt like I was failing, even though I was doing the right thing. And
mm,
but I didn't really think about writing the book until I spoke on the end of last year. I had a friend that had moved to Phoenix, and I hadn't talked to her in a while, and I was heading to Sedona in November, and I needed a place to crash on her couch, and I asked if I could stay there, and she took a while to get back to me, and it wasn't really the right time, she said, and it really wasn't what she said. It was just something about the way she said it that something didn't sound right. And she called me next day, and she apologized, and she said, "Oh, you know, I want to apologize. I had a terrible bike accident, and
ah,
I was really injured, and she had been suffering for months, physically,
ah,
psychological, mentally." And I spoke to her for an hour and a half, and at the end of the conversation, it really gave me another level of compassion for people who suffer, because true suffering is totally transformational. The person that you are begins the process of transforming into something else, and it feels really dark and scary. And no one would purposely go through the experience. But when you're in it, you have no choice. You are in it, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. So you have to find a way to go through it as best you can. And I just thought, you know, we don't really, there's books written about suffering from a Buddhist perspective, and there's books about people suffering their personal journeys, whether they had cancer or whether they lost a child or whatever their personal suffering is. But there's really not a book out there that really kind of helps people understand what suffering is and understand how part of the human experience it is, and how everything great that has ever come into this world has come out of someone's suffering, whether it comes from the prophets or from great artists or from anyone, anything that, new countries are born, new religions are born. They all get born out of people suffering. So there has to be something very powerful and very important to the human being and the human spirit that requires this for that to happen. And then, how do you deal with someone who is suffering? It's very hard when someone's suffering to know how to deal with them. So I just wanted to write a book that explained, that sort of had a process and looked at it from different religious perspectives, looked at it from different types of suffering, whether it's physical suffering, psychological suffering, spiritual suffering, like a dark night of the soul, or mental suffering, where you have some kind of mental illness, and then just, really explore the whole idea of suffering and how it can expand consciousness and how we can use that vulnerability to connect with one another more profoundly, because we all suffer and we all try to avoid it and we all try to ignore it and we try to deny it and we get mad at people for suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or we get mad at ourselves for suffering and we feel guilty because we're told that we're not supposed to. Yeah. Because we're told that we're not supposed to suffer.
Yeah, there's something terrible about me because, I'm suffering. So where have I failed? And that's not true. It's just, I'm just beginning to investigate that, but I really think that it's the beginning of something new that is trying to break through. And, there's most things we don't know. So
yeah, like
we do our best to figure it out, but yeah, so I've just started that now, and I am hoping to have a proposal done. And for this book, I'm actually going to, I have an agent, and I'm actually going to be going through a traditional publishing route for this book.
Yeah, it reminds me of the cocoon before becoming the butterfly. Inside that cocoon is this messy goo, right?
Yeah, they turn to a liquid.
Yeah, they instantly turn to liquid. Yeah, and I imagine if I were that, caterpillar inside that cocoon, I'd be scared. I'd be like, oh, my entire world is gone. It's just completely destroyed, and like this is the end, right?
Right. Yeah, it's very. It's very. I'm really looking forward to the exploration and to speaking to people about their suffering, because I think most people don't really get to discuss it in any meaningful way because it scares people and it turns people off. And I think mostly because when you talk about your own suffering, it triggers the suffering of the person that is listening to you. And when you wake that up inside of them, which is in there, it's hidden under other things, but everyone has this degree of suffering inside them that does not want to be woken up. And someone else's suffering will from the street. You stay away because you don't want their suffering to touch you.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah. And people are so afraid of their own, really, it's about being afraid of your own emotions, especially the negative, painful emotions. Yeah, like,
because you let your emotions out, you suffer.
Yeah.
I think it's the release of all that and the honesty, people sharing that suffering in a healthy way, which, you have to have some kind of, proper guidance with people that, have that kind of wisdom. Wisdom is incredibly important right now because there's a lot of information out there, and we're going through a very, transformational time on the planet, and, wisdom is in short supply. So, I'm always seeking anyone who can give me insight about myself so that I can move into a more aware, conscious place, because we all have blind spots we can't see.
Yeah.
And, I don't, I want to be able to see the things I can't see. even if it's something I don't want to accept about myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think about the hero's journey framework, right? There's the belly of the whale, and I feel like when you were treating your mom, you were almost at that place of being at the inside the belly of the whale, being cut
Yes,
off from the world, right?
it was low. I was low. And, I don't know why I got so low, but it's because everything that I ever thought I was taken away from me. And I was this completely different person. And I didn't like her. So, but she was me. So it really began to turn around a little bit when I just accepted that this person that was doing this and feeling this way was actually me. And, I had this level of darkness in me, and I had to own that. And once I began to own it, it lost some of its force. And I started seeing other things. But it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah. So you had your own death and rebirth from that experience.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It was definitely a dark night of soul that I went through. I mean, I didn't know that you could feel that bad before this. I used to sit with myself and I just go, oh, I just couldn't believe you could feel that bad. But then I would say, and now I actually, if I slip into some place like that now, I've got a technique that I've learned, that I practice. And what I do is, because a lot of our suffering and a lot of things that we get upset about are not really, are being triggered by events that happen to us. So we may get really upset about something, but the thing we're getting upset about is really not the thing we're upset about. We're upset about something that happened a long time ago, but that thing is triggering us. So I've gotten much better at realize and not reaction. I mean, not really reacting, but taking the time to take a deep breath and looking at the situation to see whether it's worth myself getting upset about, and saying to myself, and feeling this fear and saying, is that true? And I'll say, no, it's not true. That negative thing, that bad thing that I think that I'm worried about is not true. It's just trying to get me to respond to it. And what it'll do, it'll take me further down the rabbit hole, and I'll just go into a pattern. And so what I do is I stop myself and I go, okay, if that's not true, what is true? And then I go on the other side of me and I think of something very positive about myself or about somewhere I want to go. And I say, that this is what's true. This good thing is what's true. And then I will always take one small action towards it. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It just has to be a small action. And it's really surprising how when you're able to catch yourself before you go down that rabbit hole, you recognize that it's not true. You focus on something positive that is true, and then you take a small action. How very often that thing that it seemed like a giant monster at the time, just completely disappears, just evaporates.
Yeah, that was the topic in the beginning of my Facebook Live this morning when I was talking about the 4 types of anger. And the first type of anger is exactly what you're saying, where you're upset for no good reason, not a real reason, but because you believed in a lie that wasn't true in the first place. But it reminded you of a past event in the past where you suffered, or you were embarrassed, or you were hurt, and so that's your technique is a great way to not only recognize that, but also embody the transformation in our bodies by taking a step towards the truth. Because embodiment is also like one of the things that's missing from a lot of teachings, because we're often in our heads trying to process stuff, but suffering happens in the body, not just in the head.
Definitely. I mean, so it is. I mean, your body will ache from suffering. It aches, and so you need to do things that take that out of your body, and sometimes it's just about sitting with it and just letting it almost burn out. just let it burn out. And then you go into sort of a lighter place, and you'll have your aha moment. I mean, I've definitely, I've been doing spiritual work. From the time I was born, I was doing energy work and spiritual work. And I had my period of I think I was spiritually arrogant for a while, thinking that I knew so much.
Yeah.
And what this has done was teach me that I knew nothing. That everything I thought I was so smart about was not really the truth. That I just, know some things at the time that seemed, I may have had kind of magical tricks, but they weren't, there was no foundation under them. And this taught me a little bit about having foundation under work that you're doing when you're doing, when you're really doing spiritual work, or energy work or transformational work. You need the foundation. You need the foundation of deep, dark consciousness.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is why, I'm attuned in Reiki, and I'm a divine openings giver as well. But last year I took like a 6-month break from giving any divine openings and Reiki and things like that, because I felt like it was a way of kind of spiritual bypass where you just, unicorn magic, one the way without the true understanding and learning and processing of the unconscious, and making the unconscious conscious, which is really important, which I feel like some of the energy modalities takes it away. I think in emergencies it's good to use these. So now I'm starting to give divine openings again slowly, because now I'm integrating it back with this type of shadow work that you're talking about. Yeah. So that's a great point.
The flower is beautiful, but if you take the flower out of the dirt, and the dirt is the consciousness, it's the darkness of the unknown, and it's the place of growth, and a flower is what comes out of it. But if you take the flower out of the earth, it's going to die. It doesn't. You need to stay in the dirt. That's where it grows.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's bringing these two things together: the earth and the light and the dark together, which is, I think, where the real work is. And it's easy work.
Yeah, that's so true. In fact, one of my greatest breakthroughs last year was when I had a vision of light that is the color black.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how light can have many colors, like red and green and all that. But I never thought of light as having the color black. And when I saw that, it was like, wow, that's so beautiful. And I finally was able to just integrate like my shadow and my light through that vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, it's an endless expansion of awareness. And what I've learned through all the years I've been doing this is that there is no end. There is no destination. And that, I think, is the scariest thing you come across when you're doing this work, is that there is no point where you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You get to a level, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're then at the lower level of a new level.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to sort of let all your expectations of a destination, at least in this life, go. And just continue doing your work, and finding your purpose to be here, and connecting to people who care about you enough to help you through your blind spots, and try not to hold on to judgment of anyone or anything, mostly yourself, because all external judgment comes from your internal judgment first. Mm-hmm. And it's these things are not easy. These are very, they're entrenched in our biology, they're entrenched in our ancestry, they're entrenched in our childhoods, they're entrenched in our culture. And it takes a village to help someone kind of move beyond that.
Yeah, totally
really
does.
Function from a very healthy perspective.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, it's an endless upward spiral. That's how I see it. We keep spiraling back but then we go a little bit higher and then a little bit higher. But it's never
Yeah,
complete.
yeah. And it's never ending.
Yeah.
It's never ending. And I think that like one of my big aha moments was like, oh my God, I thought this was I thought I was going to end somewhere here, and I realized I'm never going to end. No matter what I learn, there's always going to be something else I don't know. And part of me is always saying, as soon as I know something, it's not true.
Right. Yeah.
As soon as you know something, it's not true anymore. You know, because it becomes, then your mind takes over, and it's, you know, but we are human, and we have these biologies that we deal with, and we're supposed to be here dealing with these biologies. So it's an interesting experience for those of us who are so energy connected on very expansive levels to stay in our bodies and work within our bodies and not get, you know, thrown up, you know, outside of our bodies, and like to stay up there because it's a lot easier to be there than it is here.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I feel like it's really a journey of our higher self descending more and more deeply into our bodies and becoming more and more grounded in it. It's not just about the awakening and the ascension. It's about descension as much as ascension. It's like, it's all about our true selves embodying more and more of our lives in our bodies. So I totally agree with that too. So thank you so much for this call. And before we get off, I have two other questions that I'm just a little bit curious, which I'm sure you can answer quickly. You mentioned earlier that the first book, I mean the book that you published, Trusting the Currents, that there's sound frequency that's embedded in it. So it's probably a good idea to read it out loud sometimes, right?
Yes, definitely. I always tell readers. I mean, it took me even a long time before I admitted about the energetic frequency in the book, because it was hard for me to acknowledge that, and I didn't think people would believe me. But I used to work on one sentence for hours because the sentence had to sound a certain way when it was read out loud, and I would work on a word. I would need to find a word that meant something that had 3 syllables because it had to have a certain cadence to it. So I always tell people as they're reading the book, if they come across a passage or a sentence or something that they really resonate with, to read it out loud. And I've had actually people, like couples, I've had a couple of different couples who read the book to each other at night before they went to bed. They took turns reading the book out loud to each other. And I think that's really a good way to do it too, is just to read out loud. But it's a different experience whether you read it out loud or you read it, you know, regularly. I mean, and people read the book very differently, depending on who they are, what stage they're at their life, their connection to themselves, whether they're open for information to come to them, because there's, you know, sort of transmissions that happen. It also, many people get very emotional reading the book, so they have to be prepared for that. Not everyone, but, you know, again, it depends on where they are. I mean, I'm finding it very interesting as more and more people are reading the book, just to see how different the experience is. I have one person reading it right now who is a young Black filmmaker, and he is not the audience for this book. I mean, he's writing, you know, blow 'em up, you know, books, and he's reading it, and he's had it for about 3 weeks now, and he's had to read it very, very slowly because it is so emotional for him, because it's triggering very difficult childhood experiences in him. So he has to read it for a while, and then he meditates on what he's read. And then he reads it, and then he meditates on what he's read. And I've had some people can only read 2 pages a day. And some people will sit down and read the book in one sitting, and then they'll read it a second time. So it's very, you know, it calls to you the way based on your energetic, you know, frequencies and sort of where you are at the stage in your life you're in. And some people have read it, you know, and then they read it a year later and they read it completely differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could imagine that.
Yeah.
So, is it an Audible? Like, do you have
It's
an
a
audio?
novel.
Huh?
But no, it's not an audiobook yet. No, I haven't. I do want to do an audiobook, but
Uh-huh.
I have to. I can't afford to do an audiobook right now, and it really needs to be. It needs to be narrated by a Black Southern woman, because
Oh.
part of the big problem I have when I do readings is it is written in Black Southern dialect,
Uh,
and me doing Black Southern dialect does not really work.
mm-hmm.
So I can read part of my prologue and epilogue because they're written from my voice, but Addie Mae is writing from a Black Southern dialect, and so I
Uh,
find a Black, Southern actress that will actually read the book and basically become Addie Mae.
yeah. You know, you mentioned something intriguing a few minutes ago when you said it took you hours just to write one single sentence sometimes, mainly because of the sound frequency and stuff. And that reminds me of a concept called deep work by Cal Newport. He wrote a book about this too, where he said that. And then the very fact that the book, took 10 years to write. And so it's a remarkable book because you did the deep work and you probably spent hours alone in total solitude with no distractions to really
Oh yeah,
finish the
I had
book,
to.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
Uh,
to. I had to. I mean, after working on the book for a year, kind of here
mhm.
and there, she literally dragged me out to Sedona, and I spent the first draft of it. I spent 9 months alone in Sedona, uh,
Mm,
finishing the first draft of the book. And if anyone came near me in Sedona, I would just stop them and say, I'm writing a novel. I can't talk to anyone.
wow.
So, I mean, towards the end of that, for the first 3 or 4 months, I spoke to no one except to say, go away. And it was just sort of, I just felt this. I had to be in my own space. I had to be with her. I slept with my computer on the bed just to sleep. I'd wake up in the morning at dawn. I'd put it on my lap and I would sit there and wait for her to come. And so that, yeah, I spent in the whole time. It was a very solitary experience
Hmm.
writing the book.
Yeah. That's what I imagined, that I had that intuitive hit, and that's why I decided to ask that question because it's, for me, it's yet another confirmation of the importance of deep work and this kind of working, like really, and this kind of dedication to your craft.
Well, I had no choice.
Yeah.
I was sort of a captive audience. I mean, she was very insistent, and
Mm,
and it felt important to me, and um, it felt like it was supposed to be doing it.
hmm. Yeah.
So I just did it. I didn't realize it would take so long, but I'm still glad that it was, that I did this, and I'm very happy with the outcome of it. And and everything she's done for me along the way.
Hmm. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on this call. I think I'll just wrap up now unless you have anything to say. And I will upload this and post it on tomorrow in the Phoenix Awakening as the Friday feature.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, awesome. Cool.